Good afternoon. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Kwezi Sokoni, and I serve as the program manager here at the Friedrich Naumann Foundation for Freedom. It is my great honor to welcome you all on this crisp Johannesburg afternoon to our latest edition of the Freedom Dialogue, aptly titled In the Eye of the Storm. Allow me to begin by observing protocol. Honorable Minister of International Relations, Ronald Lamola, Deputy Minister of Finance, Asha Sarupun, ambassadors, deputy ambassadors, high commissioners, consul generals, and esteemed members of the diplomatic corps, regional director of the Friedrich Naumann Foundation, Ms. Inge Herbert, distinguished guests from civil society, academia, government, and the international community, members of the media, and friends of the foundation. Thank you for braving the cold front to join us today. While Johannesburg may be chilly, the conversation we're about to have promises to be anything but. Today's dialogue is set against a remarkable and turbulent global backdrop. We are living in a time defined by upheaval, uncertainty, and transformation. That is why we've titled today's gathering In the Eye of the Storm, South Africa's G20 moment and the new geopolitics. The metaphor of the storm is not accidental. The world is weathering fierce geopolitical winds, a surge of nationalism and retreat from globalism, fragmenting economies and growing regional conflicts, and increasingly loud challenges to the liberal democratic values that many of us in this room hold dear. South Africa, this beautiful country of ours at the most southern tip of our beautiful continent, finds itself quite literally and figuratively in the eye of the storm, but not as a passive participant, but a pivotal player. This year, South Africa has become the first African nation to host the G20 summit, a moment of pride, but also immense responsibility. Our foreign policy stance is non-aligned yet globally engaged. It positions us to uniquely champion African perspectives in shaping a new, inclusive, multilateral order. But even as we celebrate this opportunity, we are compelled to ask some difficult questions about our foreign policy direction and our identity in this emerging global order. Who are South Africa's friends today? And how have our alliances shifted? How will we navigate the turbulent waters ahead without losing sight of our constitutional values? Can the new government of national unity speak with one voice on international matters, not just for South Africa's sake, but for Africa? And crucially, can we balance competing geopolitical interests without compromising our integrity? These are no small questions. And Minister, you are here today with us with a modest task. Please explain to us how South Africa plans to save the world. No pressure. We're grateful that you've accepted our invitation to engage in this open dialogue. And you're in good company. In this room are representatives from over 25 countries. Key diplomats, policymakers, analysts, civic thinkers, young people, and yes, people with many, many opinions, but also many, many solutions. Where diplomacy is concerned, South Africa has had a colorful start to the year. We've been told terrible things are happening here. We've witnessed some very interesting meetings in the White House. And we are now braced for some bruising tariffs. All in all, a masterclass in international relations served with a uniquely South African twist. Now, Mr. Minister, I need to warn you up front, we also have a little video to play. But don't worry, we're not going to ambush you. No, we have to, Minister. We don't have another choice. At the Naumann Foundation, our objective with the Freedom Dialogue series is to offer a platform for difficult, relevant, but also impactful conversations. The kind that challenge us to think beyond headlines and sound bites. Thank you again, Mr. Minister, for availing yourself for this invitation and this afternoon. To help us navigate today's conversation, we are joined by someone who doesn't need much introduction, Mr. Clement Manyathela. Clement is a seasoned journalist, a trusted broadcaster, and the host of both Radio 702's influential mid-morning show and SABC's Face the Nation. He has interviewed presidents, judges, CEOs, and icons. He has a knack for distilling complex issues into sharp and meaningful insights. Clement, we're grateful to have you with us today. But before I hand over to you, let us start with that ambush video.
We are confident that weapons were loaded onto that vessel, and I would bet my life on the accuracy of that assertion.
The rand has recovered a little since the explosive allegations levelled at South Africa last Thursday by the USA ambassador here, Ruben Brics, convinced that arms were given to Russia in December last year when the Lady R cargo ship docked at Simonstown Naval Base.
The International Court of Justice will on Thursday and Friday hear South Africa's genocide case against Israel.
Judges at the International Court of Justice at The Hague opened 2 days of legal arguments in a case filed by South Africa accusing Israel of genocide in its Gaza war.
South Africa unequivocally condemned the targeting of civilians by Hamas and other Palestinian armed groups and the taking of hostages on the 7th of October 2023, and has again expressly recorded this condemnation, mostly recently in its note verbal to Israel on the 21st of December 2023.
Let's get into this discussion now, taking you back to one of our leading stories. President Cyril Ramaphosa has downplayed the non-attendance of senior United States officials at the G20 meeting of foreign ministers.
International Relations and Cooperation Minister Ronald Lamola says South Africa has received an apology from the US for failing to attend the G20 Sherpas meeting in Sun City.
South Africa's ambassador to the US has arrived home after being expelled by the Trump administration. Ibrahim Rasool was welcomed at the Cape Town airport by crowds of cheering supporters.
And we treat people very well when we see there's a genocide going on, persecution or genocide going on.
But the genocide is taking place in his country.
Committing genocide.
Have used the word genocide.
Genocide.
We turn next to the fallout from President Trump's carefully staged Oval Office ambush of yet another visiting head of state. This time, South African President Cyril Ramaphosa.
Relations between the United States and South Africa have been strained in the past few years, stemming from major departures from the country's foreign policies.
South Africa was among a number of countries to be issued a tariff letter from President Trump on Monday.
To this now, Minister of International Relations Ronald Lamola says South Africa will continue to defend its foreign policy when necessary.
As we continuously say, we view our relationship with the US as strategic.
Okay, thank you.
South Africa hoped its G20 presidency would get rich, powerful nations to pay attention to poorer countries' concerns. But the richest, most powerful member, the United States, is not on board.
And on that note, welcome to the Freedom Dialogue. And over to you, Clement.
Well, thank you very much, Kwezi. I think a lot of people are actually traumatized by the videos that get played and dimming the lights. I recently I was emceeing an event in Cape Town, and the president was speaking, and they asked to dim the lights, and the president got on stage and said, "I was so traumatized when you guys said this," because he still remembers what happened when we were in Washington, D.C. Thank you to the foundation for organizing this dialogue. It's so timely. It's such an important conversation to have given where we find ourselves now with the rapidly evolving global order. So, Minister, thank you so much for sitting down and taking some time to help us understand where we are and take some questions from the delegates as well. Thank you so much for sitting down with us.
Yeah, thank you very much, Clement, and also thank you to the foundation and the audience.
Okay, so I really want to start off where I think a lot of South Africans are concerned about right now, and that's the issue of tariffs. And I'm starting here as we begin to talk about our relationship with the US, because President Cyril Ramaphosa had a telephone conversation with his US counterpart, President Donald Trump. And there was not much that the president told us about the phone call except to say they did discuss the issues of trade and tariffs. Are you able to tell us if that phone call was successful in as far as getting the US to reconsider the 30% tariffs that kicked in today?
Yeah, no, thank you very much, Clement. Firstly, as you are aware, with the US current posture in geopolitics, it's unpredictable. So I can't tell you with certainty that the 30% tariffs issue will be resolved. What I can tell you is that South Africa remains engaged and open to negotiate on the basis of resubmission of an offer through our trade and industry, and also that this unpredictability and the global turmoil on trade, as you are aware, is a global phenomenon. It's not just an exceptional South African case. It is a global challenge facing geopolitics, trade winds across the globe. There are indeed features that could be uniquely South African, because every country receives at the bilateral level the types of tariffs they will receive, and ourselves, indeed, it has been confirmed to be the 30%. So we're engaged with the process with the hope that an agreement will be reached at some stage. But I can't say that with certainty because it's an unpredictable situation.
But how did your conversation with President Trump's senior advisor go? I think you were on a telephone call with him as well. I would imagine that you did raise this issue with him. Are they willing to consider? Are they listening to us? And I'm asking this question because when I spoke to the Trade and Industry Minister last week, he said, we submitted the initial proposal. They didn't come back to us and say, this is what we think about your proposal when we're looking for a deal. They just came back and said, go and revise your deal. But you're revising a deal when you don't even know what happened to the initial deal. Are they even looking at the proposals that we're sending them?
Yeah, that is the nature of the unpredictability of it. So it's true, I had an engagement with Mr. Bolos on peace and security in the continent, on the various peace initiatives that South Africa is involved in, and also the US is involved in. I also took the opportunity to ask about what is the feedback from Washington with regards to the tariffs. And he committed that he will make follow-ups and revert to us so that we know what is the issue and where we are. And we also engage on other issues of concern to us, which he will also revert with regards to issues that are already in the public domain, that you will be aware of, the issue related to the agreement with Eswatini, the hardened criminals that are going to Eswatini, with an understanding that already 5 of them have been received. So indeed, the call, we discussed a number of issues, and we are hopeful to get a feedback. And we did raise the fact that the issue of tariffs, because of its economic impact and into our society, it will be good for us to get a feedback. If they believe our negotiation offer is not ambitious enough, at least we should be given the parameters of what is ambitious.
Where does this leave our relationship with the US? And do you think that this decision to go ahead with the tariffs and let's for now operate as though this is going to be a reality unless something changes, as you said, it's unpredictable. We could get a tweet later tonight which changes things. But where do you think this decision leaves our relationship with the US? Do you think it undermines the ongoing efforts to try and strengthen economic ties and deepen mutual trade?
Yeah, it leaves it at that level of unpredictability. And I suspect, or I think is the same for many countries across the globe, friends and foes of the US. So it's an unpredictable type of relationship. You will not know what will happen tomorrow and so forth. And we have consistently maintained that we view the US as a strategic partner in our economy, with more than about 601 US companies invested in the South African economy, with more than 100,000 jobs invested in the South African economy, and also with a number of technology exchange between the two economies. So we continue to view the US as a strategic partner in our economic development. We also will continue with the engagement. But where it leaves us is that South Africans, we need to prepare ourselves for the reality that this is an unpredictable market. This market being unpredictable does need us as a country to de-risk, to diversify in terms of our economy, to build our own self-sustainability, to look into other markets across the globe. At least we already have what we believe is a reliable partner, the European Union. We need to build from that relationship, look at what is possible. In March, we had a summit, which we believe came out with very good outcomes from which we can build, and a market in China, which the president already had built relations, a comprehensive strategic partnerships, and they've opened up to the South African economy, including the African market in a big way. We need to focus there in the Middle East. They are opening up various markets. The African continent, it's our anchor. The SADC region, the AFCTA, should be our anchor platform to work on this process that enables us to build our economy. Because the reality is that the first aspect that we need is for foreign direct investment, for the economy to grow, value addition, but also for us to, as the economy is growing, we also need to ensure that there is a redistribution in terms of the demographics of our country, which obviously is another issue that comes up from time to time.
Yeah. So speaking of diversification and looking for new markets, that also presents a tricky situation for you, because President Trump said that those that are aligning themselves with Brics, they will receive an additional 10% tariffs. So how do you manage that? Because you are in Brics as South Africa, but here's the president of the US who now uses that alliance and says whoever is aligned with this bloc then is going to get an additional 10%. Was that a factor as well during the negotiations with these tariffs?
Yeah, as I've said that it has never been raised directly like that as a factor. We saw it from the Truth Social platforms that it could be an issue. And we obviously also received the feedback from some of the interlocutors, some non-state actors from South Africa who have been going to Washington to lobby for the removal of BEE and the Expropriation Act and all that, that these are some of the issues of concerns. And I know that my colleague, Minister Tau, in the engagements, he has never received the feedback that this is an issue. But I can now confirm that in my engagement with the US mission, they have now said that these are issues that we have to look into. The BEE legislation, the Expropriation Act, and this issue of Brics that you are raising. So, as I've said when we started, is that our context and perspective is that we view America as a strategic partner. We think it's important for our economy. It's not only for the economy. South Africa and the US share values, just like most countries in the European Union. Freedom of speech, independence of the judiciary, the synchronicity of the rule of law, the Magna Carta principle. Our constitution is very clear with regards to those aspects. The issue of BEE, the Expropriation Act, we view these as domestic sovereign issues that South Africa has to deal with as a country in line with our laws and in line with our constitution. And I will not have to tell this audience, but for the purpose of those that may watch in future, South Africa has got a history of inequality, the history that has led to our economy, and also the inequality that poverty has got a color. In terms of states, it's known, blacks are poor, whites are rich in the South African context. And because of that, the Constitution of South Africa has put it as a constitutional imperative, the transformation in our society. And that's why we have got the BEE laws, we have got the Expropriation Act that is now coming, and we've got many other laws dealing with the issue of diversification. And this is it's an issue that even when, obviously I agree with it, but those that are a minority or white South Africans who don't agree with this, or those that don't think it's necessary, they've got platforms through which these issues can be engaged. South Africa does have problems, does have challenges. So it's a domestic issue that we can handle, we can deal with, and we've got enough platforms to deal with. So it's a sovereign issue. So it makes it difficult if it's part of the framework engagement with regards to the trade and the tariffs, because how do we deal with what we see as domestic issues to amend, because some of it we may need to amend the constitution to accommodate this request in terms of the tariffs. Some of it we may have to amend domestic laws and all that. So we will not tell the US what to amend in their laws, in their constitution. We believe it's a responsibility of the American people. So we think it should be the same. It should be left to the South African population.
And that was made clear to even the senior Trump advisor that you spoke to, that is where you draw the line. You are not going to even reconsider that.
Yes, the mission. Yeah, yes, I have made that. This is a domestic issue. It will be left to South African people to deal with.
How difficult has it been to negotiate these things without an ambassador on the ground? And yes, we know that there's a special envoy that the president appointed. You have since confirmed that he hasn't really been to the US on official duty yet. But is it really possible, especially where we find ourselves, where the relationship is so tricky and there are tensions, to negotiate with the US when we don't have anybody on the ground? We still don't have an ambassador. The special envoy hasn't been to the US yet. And when you are in Washington, D.C., you always hear how powerful lobby groups are there. And it's almost like our presence is non-existent. So is it really possible for us to get the ear of the people on the ground and try push for our position when we don't have anybody who's consistently there on the ground?
Yeah, I don't know where the conclusion that we don't have anybody comes from. because we do have a mission in Washington, and we do have a charge d'affaires, well-staffed, working on the South African file in Washington. We do have. The only thing we don't have is an ambassador. And the reason we don't have an ambassador is because our ambassador was expelled from Washington. You know that an ambassador was expelled in Washington by the current Trump administration. So let's say that argument is correct, that it's vacant, which is true. We don't have an ambassador. How long does it take to appoint an ambassador? So with our internal processes and also with the processes in the US, even by now, we will not have concluded the process of appointing an ambassador. Even if the president will have said, this is my ambassador nominee. The US has nominated an ambassador for South Africa. It's almost 3 months now. It may take another 3 to 4.
But at least the nomination is already made. We are not even there yet.
Yeah, but that does not answer your question. The question is, there is no one in Washington. So I'm saying, even after the ambassador was expelled from Washington, the president, the day after, appointed someone. We will still not be having someone because there's a long process. And the negotiations will be ongoing. That's the point I'm raising. And it's for that reason why the US has a charge d'affaires here. Because there is no ambassador, despite the fact that there is a nomination, even from the US. So the issue of an ambassador is neither here nor there. I mean, even with the charge d'affaires, will tell you that he does not negotiate trade deals. The trade deals is negotiated between trade and industry and their counterparts in Washington. Obviously, the president, ourselves, can from time to time intervene and say, but how far is it? Can you respond? And all that, which is a responsibility that we carry. So the feedback has to come from the USTR, and that process is ongoing. It must happen. So from our perspective, the issue of the ambassador really is a non-issue. Is to divert the real issue that we have to deal with, that there is a framework agreement that when we're in Washington, we submitted, that should be responded to, and there must be that outcome whether the tariffs can be changed from the 30% or not. And that is the crux of the matter. The rest of the other issues are just, in our view, a work of kind of cheap political scoring from some of our domestic stakeholders who have been going to Washington to undermine the work of the South African government.
How far is the process, though, of appointing an ambassador? I hear what you say about how it takes long, but I would imagine that if you appreciate that it takes long, you actually start the process much earlier.
Yes, it is.
So you started early because you know that it's actually going to take long. So with the US, they've already made a nomination, understanding that the appointment can happen maybe after 10 months, however long it takes, once you have accepted the credentials of the nomination. Where are we?
Yeah, but the point I'm raising, Clement, and you know you are trying to be clever, is that because you are raising it in the context of the tariffs. The point I'm making is that it is immaterial.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah, so
I've left the tariffs now, so I'm asking
No, let me finish. The point I'm making is that this is immaterial. And the president is aware this is an important issue. He is attending to the appointment of the ambassador, and I believe very soon he will announce his nomination, and the South African public will know. Similar with the previous process. You will remember you asked me many times, how far is the process? I did say that the president, when he has concluded all the processes that he's supposed to, he will make the nomination. And this is also because as you appoint the ambassador, there is a lot of processes, including vetting. The last time, one of the criticism you asked us about was, but what happened with the vetting and all that? So all those things needs to be done, you know. So all those, you need to consider all those factors. By the time you have appointed ambassador, you know you have vetted, you have checked, you are also, he himself, the president, is satisfied that all the checks and balances have been done. And it is at an advanced stage.
At an advanced stage, all right. Even though that's what you may have said to me
yes.
a while back.
Yeah.
It was at an advanced stage.
Yeah.
How are you managing our foreign policy within the GNU? Because, I mean, for instance, there are parties in the GNU, you speak about parties that have gone to the US. The Democratic Alliance was one of those organizations that went to speak to some of the people they say are in the Trump administration. It looks like there's still no coherent or common policy in the GNU, because you say one thing and the Democratic Alliance, which is in the GNU, comes and says something completely different. So how are you managing what our foreign policy is and what our positioning is within the geopolitical forum?
Yeah, thank you, Clemens. South Africa is a constitutional democracy. All the policies of government, including our foreign policy, have undergone extensive consultation. And in this regard, I'm referring to the National Interest Document, the Foreign Services Act, the National Development Plan in terms of what becomes of our foreign policy outlook. The Constitution is also emphatic about the role of the President and DERCO in terms of foreign relations. All those have not changed. We have not undergone any extensive process of policy review of our foreign policy perspective. So what it means is that the current foreign policy positions of South Africa stands. If there is parties in the GNU, as you have already said, they are governed by the existing foreign policy. Because there's no party which is, even if you are part of the GNU, it does not mean that because you have now come into the GNU, the South Africa's constitution has changed. The Foreign Services Act has changed. The South African National Interest Document in relation to foreign relations, it hasn't changed, it's still there. And that is what DERCO is implementing. That is what the president is implementing. If DA goes to Washington, they represent their constituents, the members of the Democratic Alliance. If the ANC goes to Washington, they represent the members of the ANC. If former President Zuma goes to Morocco, he represents the members of the MK party. He's not representing the South African population. By constitution, the only one who can represent the South African population is the president, is DERCO, and its ministers that have been assigned by the president. And in this regard, you will have seen the president has deliberately taken a decision to include even members of the GNU. If a matter we are going to Japan, it involves agriculture, he will invite Minister Steenhuisen. We know that Minister Steenhuisen is a leader of the Democratic Alliance. But he's not inviting him on the basis that he's a leader of the Democratic Alliance. He's inviting him on the basis that he's the Minister of Agriculture. And if we're going to Washington, he will invite him if he believes agriculture has got a bigger role to play in the trade negotiations with Washington. Because it's the most impacted and affected by the tariffs, agriculture, trade and industry. If it's the most impacted and affected, the president will invite that relevant minister and say, let's go to Washington. These are the parameters of the engagement. So even myself, when I go to anywhere, I am mandated by the policy positions of the South African government, including cabinet. I don't do it on a frolic of my own. So if the DA or anyone that you are referring to has gone to Washington, they were not doing it on behalf of the South African government.
Yeah. So the DA's argument is that we want to be the custodian of that foreign policy as well, right? So they're saying we're not here to rubber stamp ANC policy. The ANC has been in charge over the last 30 years. So when you talk about existing policy, it is ANC existing policy. The difference now is that you are no longer in charge. You are 40% in the GNU. You've got other parties who are representing their own constituencies. So if they are there and they exist to just implement what the ANC has been implementing over the last 30 years, is that fair? And I'm asking that because the statement of intent that you signed as the ANC together with other parties said, there shall be an agreed policy agenda that drives this GNU. At what point do you sit as different parties and say, let's come up with an agreed policy agenda so that all of us are custodians of this policy and we're not rubber stamping ANC policy that's been around for 30 years?
Thank you very much for mentioning the statement of intent. The DA is a signatory of the statement of intent. I think it's clause 10 of the statement of intent says our foreign policy outlook will be informed by the Constitution, by the Foreign Services Act, by the National Interest Document, by the National Development Plan. It will have a human rights outlook, Agenda 2063, as a cornerstone of our foreign policy. That is what we're implementing. That is what we are doing. So we are not outside the statement of intent. We are not outside what is the South Africa's foreign policy. If the DA wants a review of South Africa's foreign policy, it must follow the same procedure that was followed to adopt this. It must go to Parliament. It must be a cabinet process. There must be consultation. We cannot just implement it because now the DA is part of the GNU. The GNU does not supersede the Constitution. South Africa is a constitutional democracy. It is part of the rule of law that you respect existing policies until they've been changed. So now they've not been changed. We must implement them as they are. So if they want to change them, it's within their right. I mean, we can't stop them. But they must follow the same procedure. Even the ANC, and as you are saying, even when the ANC was still the majority party, it followed processes to adopt the foreign policy. We did not just say because we're the ANC, we're the majority party, therefore this is the foreign policy of South Africa. It still followed processes which South Africans participated in. The DA must follow the same.
Is there appetite, though, to hear other parties if they say, maybe we don't like this positioning, let's go and follow the process to change certain aspects about our positioning in as far as our foreign policy is concerned? Is there appetite for that? Because it doesn't look like there is appetite. I think what exists now, the position, or at least the impression I'm getting is, what exists now and has been existing for the last 30 years is what we must run with. But there are people here that are saying, we are part of you, we are governing with you, we would like to have a say. Is there appetite to hear that?
The GNU has got mechanisms for people to engage on whatever issue, dispute, whatever. They can debate it there. My role is to implement existing policy, and I'm implementing. The president's role as we speak now is to implement what exists in line with the Constitution, and that's what we're doing.
How is South Africa positioning itself geopolitically right now? I mean, we speak a lot about the rise of the global South in this increasingly changing international system. And it appears like as the global South, we're beginning to sort of reshape the dynamics of global politics. Where do you see South Africa? What is the intention behind our foreign policy in as far as this new changing system is concerned? How do we define ourselves?
Yeah, South Africa believe in multilateral platforms as key drivers of foreign policy, with the UN as the prime platform for driving that, the UN Charter, the progressive internationalism, in line with our enjoyed rights to see a human rights outlook in global governance and affairs. And obviously with the bridging of both the global South and the global North as an emerging economy and democracy, we remain non-aligned, so that we can continue to play a role of development. We can trade with the West, we can trade with the North, we can trade with the East, we can trade with everyone. And we can also play a role in terms of human rights outlook across the globe. So South Africa does have a key role in key multilateral platforms, and it is also for that progressive outlook that we have joined Brics to counterbalance our own national interest in terms of development as a developing partner. And Brics has also played a key role, the national Development Bank of Brics in our country, in infrastructure. But we have also had lots of partnerships across the globe. One of them includes the European Union, which has also been very beneficial to our country in terms of development, in terms of technology, in terms of investment that we continue to drive to come into our country.
What does that policy then mean in as far as our role on the continent is concerned? Do you think we still, for lack of a better phrase, that big brother on the continent? I mean, I saw just the other day Qatar, well, with the help of Qatar, the US now helping to, quote unquote, end the war in the Eastern DRC. And one of the questions, at least I had, was what happened to us as South Africa? Ordinarily, you know, we would be a country that has managed to probably negotiate some truce of sorts. We always talk about African solutions to African problems. But here's Qatar and the US coming to solve our problems on the continent. So where is that positioning for us as South Africa on the African continent?
Yeah, we have always seen our role within the context of Agenda 2063, the silencing of the gun, building an Africa which is developmental, where there is peace and prosperity. And you are aware, we were part of the SADC mission in the Eastern DRC. We're still participating within the multilateral platform. And in all the conflicts where we have brokered peace, it was on the basis of an assignment from the multilateral body. It's either SADC or the African Union that has mandated us. And sometimes it will have been the United Nations on some of the peacekeeping missions. So we've never seen our role as a big brother. We have always played our role within the platform of multilateralism. Even when we went to Mozambique, it was through SAMIM. It was a SADC platform, the Eastern DRC. We are currently in South Sudan. We are the chairperson of the Committee of 5 of the African countries, mandated to take South Sudan to their first democratic elections as the guarantor of the revitalized peace agreement. Even when we engage with the situation in Ethiopia and Eritrea, it was also through. So we've never seen our role within the context of a big brother at a bilateral level. We've always participated as mandated by those structures, and we believe we continue to do so in the various issues. And with regards to the one you are referring to, in particular the Eastern DRC, you are aware what has happened. Our defense force has just concluded the return home, also on the basis of a decision of SADC. But SADC and the AU remain seized with the matter, with the facilitators that have been assigned by the African Union.
I think the common understanding here is that even the former President Thabo Mbeki said, you were never always going to try and resolve what's happening in the Eastern DRC through the battle of the gun. It was always going to take negotiations. It's going to take sitting down with the different parties and having a political solution. I think there's an understanding of that. So I suppose what I'm asking is, where were the regional bodies, or even the continental body, the African Union? Because have our dialogues with the different parties failed? Because for some reason, Qatar and the US came, they met with the DRC president, they met with the Rwandan president, and the deal emerged. What does that say about this continental body, the African Union, in being able to negotiate critical matters like that, and not only intervening where you bring in the soldiers?
Yeah, it has always been our understanding too. I mean, in modern conflicts, there's no counter that can win through the barrel of a gun. It has proven all conflicts are clear that they must end in a negotiated settlement. And it was not for the first time that in the DRC soldiers were sent to help as some sort of a peace guarantee to enable the negotiations to continue. So that has always been the goal. And even when former President Mbeki sent, at the time, our defense force through the SADC mission, the understanding was that this will end at the negotiation table. Everything, it has always been our belief, and South Africa has never hidden the fact that we are anti-war. We believe in negotiations. So there has been our participation in the platform through SADC and the AU. But at the end of the day, the facilitators that have been assigned by the AU hold the process of negotiations. As you are aware, that process was led by former President Lorenzo, current president of Angola, in his former role as a mediator. Now there is a new person who is now the mediator on behalf of the African Union. But you cannot, yes, we need African solutions, and that's the reason why South Africa invests is defense if requested by SADC, by the AU. We also send our South Africans to help to facilitate, because we believe that African problems must be solved through African solutions. And even in all these conflicts, we will contribute. And that's why even with the South Sudan issue, we are putting our resources. With the DRC issue, we put our resources to enable the negotiations and so forth, because we believe in these African solutions. Because the solution won't come just by saying there must be an African solution. It must come by you committing resources as African states, helping the process, and that is what we're doing. We continue to do it, but if the parties themselves says we want to go somewhere to be mediated in Qatar, to be mediated in the US, we can't stop them. But we will continue to impress on them that we think you need to continue with the process that the African Union and SADC has started, so that this peace process is homegrown, but also we can all work together to sustain it.
I want to touch on the G20, and then we're going to come and take some questions. So if you have any questions, please prepare them. And you can raise your hands when we're done here, and we're going to have some roving mics. We are holding the G20 presidency this year. I mean, it's a great opportunity for us also to place our interests on the international agenda, especially also the interests of the continent. What do you think are the opportunities that exist for this country, and in fact this continent, with this G20 presidency?
Yeah, it's a huge opportunity, and that's why we've put it in the G20 concept document and agenda, the agenda that you are aware of. The key issues that are facing the African continent: firstly, financing for development, the debt issue that most of our countries are facing in terms of the costs, because it's more expensive for most of our countries to get financing for development and so forth than other countries in the developed north and all. So, and the issue of climate change, less than 3% of climate financing comes to the global south, and most of it, less than 3%, comes to the African continent, whereas we are the mostly affected by climate change. So on the financing for development, financing for climate change, this is a huge opportunity for the African agenda to be shown into the countries of the world, to intervene, to assist us to respond to these issues of climate financing, to respond to all this. There are already some of the work that you can point with regards to climate financing. If you think about the JP, which is a platform which the European Unions and many other countries have come together to say this is how we can help South Africa as a pilot in terms of climate mitigation. But we need more for the continent to deal with the climate challenges and mitigation, but also on issues of artificial intelligence. We are a youthful continent. We are only dealing with it from the context of governance, how it will be governed and so forth. But we need to unleash the youthful population to be at the center of the revolution on artificial intelligence. So it's a huge opportunity for the continent.
Are you at all concerned about the potential absence of the US president or even a senior US official? Donald Trump, President Trump said the other day that he's not sure that he will come. I think Marco Rubio has already said on Twitter a while back that he doesn't think that he'll come and attend the G20. I know there are some US officials that have attended some of the meetings ahead of the summit. Does it concern you though, should America not send a senior official in a Secretary of State or in the President of the US? Is that a concern for you?
Yes, it is. I mean, it's like when you're hosting the World Cup and you say, we're concerned that another team will not pitch. It will be a concern that another team won't pitch because the US is the founder of the G20. They are important. They've got an important role to play. As a founding member of the G20, they are the G20. But it is South Africa's position that they are invited to participate in their G20. They are allowed to participate in the G20 in whatever format the American people want to participate. It's either President Trump comes himself or he sends whoever. We will not tell the Americans that they can't send whoever that they want. If they want to send whoever, it's up to the Americans to send whoever. But the South African government message is that they are welcome. But if they don't come, obviously we have to deal with the consequences of them not coming. The G20 is a consensus-based organization. What happens to the declaration? What happens to the outcomes and all that? The members of the G20 will have to agree that this now becomes the type of outcome of the G20 that has happened in South Africa. It will be good to have a leader's declaration when it's particularly that it is happening for the first time in the African soil, for the marginalized and for everyone. It will be very important that the declaration and the outcome is what can carry the weight in the global politics. But if it doesn't happen, we will have to live with what is there, which obviously will either be a declaration with some disassociation or with a chess summary and so forth. But we believe that they have to participate. If they don't, we will have to proceed with or without them. And without them, we'll have to live with the consequences. And we think that all the countries that will have participated, it will still carry sufficient weight, the fact that there are countries that will be agreeing with the outcomes of the G20. And we believe that will be persuasive enough to still make an impact on the issues of financing, on the issues of climate change and so forth, just like the commitment, the compromise or the Seville commitment that the UN member states have just adopted in Seville. When it was adopted, the US withdrew just before the Seville meeting. But the outcomes are now being processed. They are going to help the globe in terms of dealing with issues of financing for development. So we think that we will still be able to come up with an outcome that will still shape the global financing environment.
All right, Minister, let's take some questions now. Okay, there are a few hands here. Can we please request the roving mic? And please give us your name and where you come from, and you can direct your question to the Minister. Yeah, it's on.
Testing. There we go. Good afternoon, Minister. My name is Utzileng Kadimeng. I'm a second-year law student. I wanted to ask a question around the negotiations with the United States. And I'm quite curious, what sense does the Minister Nderko get of the likelihood of a deal with the US? What are the areas of compromise that South Africa is willing to go in with? We've obviously seen quite a few countries in the world capitulating to an extent in order to appease the requests from the US, the Brazilians recently deciding to hold out and stand firm. What is South Africa's strategy, and if we are going to compromise, what are the areas of compromise that we're willing to strategically make?
Thank you very much. Another one?
Seems like you don't want to give me the mic. No, all right. No, thank you so much. My name is Kawiga Zukumalo. I'm from Swazi Lives Matter. And Minister, thank you very much for sharing your time with us today. And one wants to start by commending you. I think the theme for today's dialogue really speaks to how you've been able to hold the fort, and we see that the young lion in you is still there. I just want to ask two really quick questions, and I was quite happy to hear you continuously speaking around, the human rights and how that is an instant in terms of a pillar in the South African foreign policy position and posture. And I want to bring it home a little bit. I know that currently I think that the topic really is around the tariffs and the US, but I want to bring it a little bit more home in terms of Swaziland in itself. I think there are current issues in Swaziland with the criminals that are there, many more to come. I see that South Africa has condemned that. But mine really wants to speak to what has been consistently going on in Swaziland. Fundamentally, when you speak about human rights, you currently have a regime that is an oppressive regime. You currently have a regime that operates by really not giving the human rights, fundamental rights, political rights, for instance, in Swaziland. And there's many issues that have happened without trying to take too much time. Post-2021, the unrest, post the SADC mission that went into Swaziland. And really the ties that South Africa has with Swaziland. My question, Minister, beyond the statements, beyond what South Africa's role has been in the multilateral platforms, as you have said, that gives South Africa a mandate. But one wants to really ask a fundamental question. What is South Africa's position insofar as the royal regime is concerned in Swaziland? That would be my first question. The last question, very quickly. I know that G20 speaks about solidarity as part of its theme. Minister, and I want you to try and help me contextualize how the theme on solidarity in particular and the current context in South Africa insofar as the attacks on foreigners that have been very prevalent in the last few weeks that we've seen. And it's an ongoing thing, but we don't also get a sense from the South African government around what it is that needs to be done around the attacks on foreigners for many reasons, and some valid reasons, but the approach and the response from the South African government is very, very unclear, or it's not as loud as one would like to think. So what does the solidarity mean in G20 in the context of what we're seeing in South Africa currently?
Thank you very much. Minister, let me get you to respond to these three questions. On Swaziland, G20, the issue of solidarity, attacks on foreigners, and of course the question about the areas of compromise.
Yeah, no, thank you. Firstly, is that because of the unpredictability of the situation, and what I said that there was no feedback clear enough, except that we are not ambitious enough in terms of the framework. So it makes it difficult to even know what are those areas of compromise within the context of the framework agreement. But as I've said, from the engagement I've had with the mission, the areas I think which has become clear they expect compromise on from us are the ones that I've spoke about, the expropriation Act, the BE, all those issues that I said, for me, they fall within the area of domestic imperative, which we have to deal with as a sovereign state. And it's difficult to see how you're going to compromise on those, because some of them may even need the amendment of the constitution. It's a sovereign issue of the South African public. So that one is clear. It's a non-negotiable issue in terms of that aspect. But I mean, with the BE, we have also stated very clear that in terms of our act, we have accommodated some of the concerns through our BEE Act when we want to think about the equity equivalent. And it is in that context that there is a lot of American companies invested in the South African economy through this program. I mean, Coca-Cola is one of running some of the biggest schemes in terms of equity equivalent. So there's a lot of Microsoft, Amazon, there's a lot of US companies invested in the South African economy within the existing frameworks. With regards to the song, I mean, the SG of the ANC, I think yesterday gave a context with regards to the song, where it comes from and why it was sung, but also why it's no longer sung in ANC gatherings. We all know it's no longer sung in the ANC. And that's what he said. And we all know that. Clement, you view ANC. Okay? You will not find a situation where the ANC will deliberately sing the song Dubuli Bone with an aim to incite violence and all. It's not commonly sang in the ANC. So why would we make something that is a non-issue an issue? So with regards to Eswatini, as she has said, indeed, we have always played our role within the context of SADC. And when I say with our human rights outlook, even when we participate in SADC, our inputs is informed by our human rights look in terms of our constitution. So we will, as we engage with the matter at that multilateral platform of SADC, we look also the matter related to Eswatini in the context of human rights, freedom of speech, treatment of people in line with the human rights outlook, and so. So that's South Africa's posture and position.
But so far, what have you, from that regional body, SADC, because you've done work, right, as SADC, you've looked at the situation in Swaziland. What did you find? What does your report say?
I think, if I remember, I might be wrong, but speaking under correction, there was a process of national engagement and dialogue for both the regime and the political parties playing a role in Eswatini to some kind of a democratic project. But I can no longer remember exactly. But there was that kind of a discussion.
But there were some concerns that were picked up by SADC.
I think so, with regards to human rights. And I think there was, which led to this engagement process. But I'm no longer exactly sure what was the finding and all that.
Okay, there was a question about attacks on foreigners. I think that's a specific question you asked, like Operation Dudula.
Yeah, but it's in the context of solidarity and trying to understand what that means in
Yeah, when we see attacks on foreigners.
Yeah, I mean, it should be condemned. There is no any other way. The law must be applied. If there is any breaking of the law by foreign nationals, it must be treated the same way like a South African is breaking the law. I think the issue is the context of the reality of the contestation of resources that we have to deal with, obviously as the South African government, but also with our own counterparts in the region. This is now the reality of what is now in front of the South African population and public. How do we continue to ensure that there is a continuous coexistence with the existing framework and the situation? But the attack, either to a foreign national or to any South African, should be condemned.
Yeah. Okay, let's take another round of questions outside.
Good day, hi, my name is Kumo Kumalo. I am from Born Free Podcast in partnership with the Mail and Guardian. I want to ask a question specifically around non-alignment, because if you look historically at what's happened in South Africa over the last 2 years, we abstained from voting for Russia in the UN. We took a strong United States ally in Israel to the ICJ. Could we please get clarity specifically on what that non-alignment is? But then secondly, if that still holds, as we seem to be leaning more and more towards Eastern powers, and it's specifically spoken to today in the idea of Brics. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Another one?
No, thank you very much. My name is Tobejane Takhatso Given. I am a second year law student at the University of South Africa. I have two questions quickly. Minister, the first question, which resources are you investing in the youth of this country to ensure that you shape the leaders who will take South Africa to the Agenda 2063, the Africa we want? Putting into considerations the high number of unemployed graduates. The second question, what should the stance of the youth of this country be when the country is brought to its knees by foreign nationals, especially with regards to the false accusations about a white genocide in South Africa? As the youth of this country, we view this as an attack to our flag, which displays the importance of unity and collaborations to all South African citizens. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Minister, we can take those three.
Yeah, no, thank you. Firstly, with regards to the non-alignment posture of the South African government coming from the Bandung principles, it's a position that we will not side with any global superpower. We will remain informed by our own extension of our domestic views and policies with the human rights outlook across the globe without aligning with anyone. And to be specific with the Ukraine-Russia situation, as he juxtaposed it with the ICJ, with Gaza. South Africa was among the first countries in the world to raise the issue of a need for a dialogue to find solution in Russia and Ukraine. You will remember the Africa Peace Initiative. And we did not just say it. Our president took an initiative. He went to Kiev at the high risk having to to go through a train. I don't know, Clement, if you're there or you ran away, that you may die along the way. High risk of going to Kiev. And from Kiev, we went to Moscow.
Yeah.
For almost a year or so, he was one of the few leaders in the world who has spoken to both the president of Ukraine and the president of Russia, bridging the gap between the two, trying to find a long-term solution. And also South Africa participated in initiatives from Kiev and from various parts of the world to find a solution. The Ukraine Peace Initiative, he engaged with President Putin. He has also hosted here in South Africa the president of Ukraine. And not only here in South Africa, in most multilateral platforms where there is an opportunity, the president engaged with president of Ukraine to see whether there is any new developments that we can bridge the gap with Russia to take the matter forward. And as we speak now, I think the US has now come around on the same issue to say, but maybe this could be the way forward to help this situation, you know. With the Gaza issue, I know on this one I've seen you, Clement, because there was no train. We were vilified when we went to the ICJ from all quarters of the world. And we were vindicating the UN Charter, the UN Convention on Genocide, when we went to the ICJ, vilified from all quarters of the world. But I think now the world is coming to the same position that South Africa took when we went to the ICJ. And I think the last conference on the two-state solution was a clearer indicator. France stating its intention to recognize Palestine, Canada,
the UK,
and the UK, and I think the European Union, most of it has also now said, you know, there are issues of violations that we may need to address and deal with. So
just to follow up on the non-alignment, I mean, we see the different posture that the president has taken in trying to negotiate peace, but have you not, as South Africa, voted against resolutions at the United Nations that were condemning Russia and calling for Russia to withdraw its soldiers from Ukraine?
We abstained.
Why?
Because we still had a role to play to bridge the situation. So there was ground for us to abstain. And in the context of multilateral politics, when you are abstaining, you are not objecting, no, you are agreeing. You are just saying there is a different context to which you can handle the matter. And that's why when we abstain, we explained the reason of our abstinence and the Africa Initiative, the processes that we have said. And even in that abstinence, we still maintain that there must be a respect of the sovereign integrity of Ukraine.
Would you then accept a similar explanation from another country if you go to the United Nations and you say Israel has to withdraw the soldiers from Gaza and the country says, well, we abstain? Would you accept that explanation? Because I would imagine that just one second, I would imagine that for me, there's a principle in law, international law favors and appreciates the concept of sovereignty. So if a country violates international law and goes and invades another country, the first thing all of us, I would imagine, are calling for is leave. That is not allowed. So when you abstain, they're still there. Can't you?
In the platform of the UN, when you have explained your reason, it does not mean that you are undermining the sovereign integrity. And that's why in our explanation, we will state the respect of the sovereign integrity of the Ukraine. So the difference with the Gaza one is that it's not that countries were abstaining. They were using the veto power in the Security Council to object so that the resolution does not go beyond the Security Council. It dies. It's the end of the matter.
Okay, there are other two questions before we forget about them, Minister. Resources invested to shape leaders as we head to Agenda 63 and the country brought to its knees by foreign nationals who are going to America to say all sorts of things.
Yeah, no, we as DERCO, we do have what is called a cadet program, which builds the future diplomats. We also host a number of training initiatives for young aspirant diplomats to be trained on mediation and all that. So we do invest a lot. And in this regard, we want to thank our partners, the European Union, that helps us with that, Finland, I forgot the other countries, but there's a lot of Norway. These are the ones I remember out of my head who have invested with us, partnering with us in these types of programs. With regards to both state and non-state actors who goes to badmouth the country in Washington, I mean, really, we always say we are a constitutional democracy. We all have rights and responsibilities. You can express whatever opinion. You can fly to Washington to say whatever you want to say. But at the end of the day, when the interests of the country are at stake, we think that we all have a responsibility to act in the national interest. And I think in South Africa, there has been a lot of very good intended Afrikaner organizations that have spoken in the national interest and that have said, you know, in South Africa, we do have problems. We do have challenges, but we don't have this one of genocide. It's a lie, it's falsehood. There is no such thing as genocide. Yes, there are problems. We don't agree with BEE. We don't agree with the expropriation and all that, but we have got enough avenues in our country to handle these issues. These are domestic sovereign issues that we can handle in South Africa.
Can we take another round of questions?
Sorry, Clement.
Hello. Thank you, Minister. My name is Rashid. I'm from the business sector and manufacturing sector. I have a concern that history might be repeating itself once again. With America trying to make itself great again, in their new tariff structure, they are posing high duties to reindustrialize their country. We have not adjusted. We are allowing them to export our raw materials without charging them any duty, whereas our industry is suffering because they are charging a 30% duty on finished products. Now, in the same way that 30 years ago, when South Africa was contributing 30% of its GDP to manufacturing, we allowed ourselves in the same way to export our resources to develop China, who became much richer, and we destroyed our local industry. So I think we must not fall prey to the same thing. When America is trying to make their economy great, we have to put South Africa first and make South Africa great again.
Thank you, sir. Another one?
Can we take a question from outside? It's from the first batch. Is that okay?
Yes, please. Go ahead.
Thank you, Minister. It's Ryan Smith, the Democratic Alliance's spokesperson on foreign affairs. It's nice to see you outside of committee. Forgive me, but we get the impression that DIRCO is really speaking from both sides of its mouth on foreign policy. You've stated that we act in South Africa's national interest, but we repeatedly take foreign policy stances that irk our largest trading partners. And the US tariff issue is a very good example. It's really caught us in the crosshairs of a tariff war that we really should not be involved in. We preach non-alignment, and yet we are being increasingly perceived as partial on the international stage based on decisions that South Africa takes on its foreign policy. And you stated that South African foreign policy is rooted in the Constitution, and yet South Africa has overseen the backslide of democracy in our region over successive decades. And if you look not only at overseeing the backslide of democracy, but even praising the capture of nations by corrupt individuals such as Emerson Mnangagwa, who was invited as a guest of honor at the president's inauguration last year, it really does not position ourselves as being loyal to the constitutional principles that we should be embarking on a foreign policy with. And speaking to United Nations votes, the abstention of South Africa on UN human rights votes is actually a trend. Between 70 to 80% of UN human rights votes we abstain on. How are we advancing constitutional principles, our liberal constitutional principles, if we stand back from very important platforms where our voice should be heard? And lastly, just in respect to the statements of intent, I'm very glad that you mentioned it, because there are mechanisms for an impasse in the GNU to be addressed, but those are bulldozed by the ANC. There is no mechanism that the ANC utilizes within the statement of intent framework. There was no consultation on a VAT increase. There was no consultation on the passing of the Basic Education Laws Amendment Act, or the Expropriation Act, or the National Health Insurance Act. So my question is, when can we expect a consistent foreign policy from DIRCO, and when can we expect the ANC to come in good faith and negotiate on what's best for South Africa going forward in terms of the government of national unity? Thank you.
Thank you. The last one.
Hi, my name is Nicole Fritz.
Okay, just hold on, ma'am. I think the minister wants to answer in case. I was going to remind you, but you can go ahead. There was a question about America trying to re-industrialize. That spoke to raw materials as well. You want to touch on that first?
Yeah.
Or do you want to start with your colleague?
No. I will start with this one because I think it's the crux of the matter. And I think he has hit really the real issue. That with negotiations for a trade agreement with the US, and that is why DTIC obviously will be grappling with, and the South African government, is that at the end of the day, you have to come up with an agreement that is balanced, that you still believe will help you with your own industrial strategy, economic growth, foreign direct investment, and so forth. And I'm saying it's the crux of the matter because you will remember in the past the impact some of these agreements held in the poultry industry, the dissemination of the industry and the jobs and all that. So it has to be balanced. And when you end up with an outcome, you might end up with an outcome that, yes, there has been a reduction and all that, but at a cost to some sectors in the economy, which may even increase the number of jobs that we are currently talking about. Currently, the estimate is about 30,000. Obviously, it may increase or go down after the modeling. And it's about 0.2% in terms of the effect to the economy. So you may end up with an agreement that after changing and all that and the acceptance, it then do what he says, affect other sectors. So all these have to be considered and be balanced. And I agree with him that because, and the president has said this in many bilateral engagements and negotiations, that all engagements that South Africa enter into now, we want to see value addition in the continent and in South Africa in particular. And we even if it's US companies, we want them to come in, invest, help with value addition. But some of the products we take to the US help also in terms of input into the industrialization, into their markets and all that, which can be built in our own industrial strategy. So it is important that indeed the outcomes does help also with that aspect. And he says, how will that be possible? Because the US is clear, has taken a position that they want to reindustrialize. So that then becomes the crux of what will be the outcomes of, I don't know how it will be resolved. It will be the outcomes of the engagements. But on our side, we do think it needs to help us with that issue of value addition. And that's why in all engagements, the South African government insists on the aspect of value addition. You will have seen also from the statement with the European Union. It's part of that, the issue of value addition. Even at FOCAC, where we participated at a multilateral platform, we insisted on the outcome reflecting value addition in the African continent. And it is there in the FOCAC statement also. So it's something we raise across, but it's also key that the African continent itself speak in one voice on this issue. And that is one of the issues we raise also at SADC level, at the AU level, that we all have to come together as a continent, engage in one voice so that the current wave of natural resources that the continent is endowed with, the African continent, does not also lead us to another cycle of extraction like in the past. So it is key. I agree fully. On the on this issue that Ryan is raising, I think that's the crux of the issue. In
There
the
are many
GNU.
crux of issues today. Eh?
Yeah. No, I mean in the GNU.
Yeah.
I mean in the GNU that, and I will repeat it, Clement. The statement of intent is clear of what we must do on foreign affairs. There's no confusion, and that is what we are doing. The DA has signed what we are supposed to do. Agenda 2063, Human Rights Outlook, non-aligned and all. And we are doing it. So, the issue he is raising that there is someone who is bulldozing, implementing things that are not agreed upon. And he even gives wrong examples about the things that are being implemented that are not being agreed upon. And one of those wrong examples is this issue of the Bella and the NHI that the president has signed. NHI and Bella were passed by the previous parliament. They have got nothing to do with the GNU. Zero. Parliament passed them in the previous term. They were in the table of the president. The president had to follow the internal processes in the presidency, which is to check whether the bill is constitutional or not constitutional. Is not a subject of the GNU. It's wrong that Rian is bringing it to the GNU. The foreign policy position of the South African government was never a dispute, even when we agreed and signed on the statement of intent. It was, even when we were worried, I was fortunate to be part of the negotiators, and I can't remember whether Rian was there or not. But we were worried, obviously, that there will be issues of disagreements. We knew that there will be such. And that's why a mechanism was developed, that it should be the one that will deal with areas of disagreement. That is for the ANC, SG, and all that, which, and his counterpart, Helen Zille. They must sort out, they must deal with that. But the point I want to conclude with on this is that neither the statement of intent, I'm saying this is covered, the foreign policy is covered in the statement of intent. I'm saying even if it was not covered, the statement of intent does not supersede the Constitution. The powers that the president have to implement foreign policy, to appoint and disappoint, to champion the South Africa's foreign policy, which we are currently doing, informed by the various legislations I've already mentioned, which includes the statement of intent, and I will argue that it covers what we're doing. With regards to this issue of that we are making relations or we are aligned with the adversaries, poking the face of our biggest trading partner, Clement, really. I mean, all South Africans knows there's nothing that the South African government did to poke the American government. And the tariffs issue is not an exceptional South African issue. It is because of America's position that the first speaker raised of their intentions to re-industrialize, that they have taken a decision to go into war on tariffs with many countries across the globe. It is not because President Ramaphosa provoked President Trump that we have got a tariffs war in the world. No, it's a correct mischaracterization. And it is also wrong that because the American government has now taken this position, ourselves, we have to yield to everything because they are our second biggest trading partner. And that's why he's now bringing this issue of BEE as being friends with the adversaries and so forth. And I say, American companies have been investing in the South African economy. They are still here. That's why we have Coca-Cola. We have got Microsoft. We have got Amazon. I can name, they are here in this, investing within the existing framework. So we have not poked any American government because of that. The genocide issue, I mean, I can't even go there. You know that, all of us know. The issue that is sometimes calm is that we are now making friends with their adversaries. Let's give an example. We have been clear that we are non-aligned. Even with China, on human rights, sometimes we vote against them or abstain in some platforms of the UN and so forth. So we are trading with everyone. We're trading with the US, we are trading with China, we are trading with the European Union, we are trading with the African continent. We are non-aligned in terms of that because we are a developing country. We have to trade with everyone. Even on our positions are, it's a human rights outlook on international relations. And that's what informs how we vote in most multilateral platforms. So I can say, Clement, that it is baseless to say that we are aligned with the adversaries of the American government. And the South African government is not anti-US. We are non-aligned. We work with everyone. On the basis of positions and our outlook, we will vote at the multilateral platforms. Maybe to conclude on this is that, obviously, one of the accusations that sometimes come is that, no, you were paid your legal fees by Iran. I mean, you know. It's in the reports. It's public information. The AG is the South African government that pays. And when that falls, they say, no, but you have got a nuclear program of some sort with Iran. I mean, Clement, you know, the biggest use of nuclear civilian in South Africa, we are doing it with France, with the Quebec power station. We are doing it with America on isotopes for medical and so forth. There's nothing on nuclear we have with Iran, even for civilian use. So it's conspiracy. Most of it based on white supremacist thinking.
Is there a last question there? Oh yes, let's take that quickly.
Thank you. I thought it might be worth recalling, of course, that Brazil is among the nations that has had the highest tariffs imposed on it. And that, of course, is because the US is seeking to penalize it for its actions against former President Bolsonaro. And you can imagine that the constituency in South Africa that is most angry in believing that somehow tariffs have been earned by our conduct would be absolutely incensed were we having tariffs imposed because Trump believed that Zuma, for instance, was being unfairly prosecuted by our courts. But the question that I wanted to put to the Minister, my name is Nicole Fritz, I'm from the Campaign for Free Expression. I have been a critic of South Africa's foreign policy over some time, but I applaud South Africa's actions before the International Court of Justice. I think it was a very brave and bold action to take. It foretold in its application for provisional measures of the starvation that has indeed come to unfold in Gaza, the famine that we're seeing, and I actually think far from the vilification that South Africa earned, it deserves praise. My question to the Minister, though, is to what extent has there been pressure on South Africa from the US to step back from that case? The case on the merits is obviously still to come. To what extent are you engaging with our strong partner, the EU, to ensure that there is more done to bring about an immediate ceasefire and aid and a resolution, a just and peaceful resolution there. Also to your partners in the GNU, perhaps they won't be sending MPs on free trips to states undertaking genocides. And then, yes, I mean, the only thing that I would say is, you know, whilst we deserve all sorts of applause for that action, I would say you would have to admit that our actions in respect of Russia, which have as clearly breached international law, have been far more ambiguous. And I think that that disparity does raise really valid questions about our role on the international stage.
All right, thank you very much. To what extent was there pressure on the ICJ case? You remember when we were in Washington, D.C., I did ask President Trump, what do you expect South Africa to do? And I was very surprised to hear him say, well, we don't expect anything. They can do whatever they want to do, even though it was the Trump administration initially that said, you are taking our ally to the ICJ. Has there been pressure ever since?
Yeah, no, he didn't end there. He said the court will have to make a decision.
Yeah.
And that's what we take, that the ICJ make the decision. We are ready for the state of Israel to respond to our memorial, which they've been given until early next year. We want the case to be decided on the merits. There have been some whispers that this is an issue, and obviously some interlocutors and some newspaper articles we have heard about it, and some have come to say, yeah, you need to. Yeah, but I think there is an acceptance in Washington that South Africa will not withdraw the case in the ICJ. They may not agree with us on it and all that, but I think they accept that we will not withdraw. And I think it is important that the case must be decided on its merits to vindicate international law, so that there is no might that is always right. International law must be vindicated. The future of the world depends on it, the UN Charter. You may criticize us, it's fine, and we think that if there is anyone who thinks that we are wrong, the ICJ processes allows for any other country to go in, present their side of the story. Just like Israel will respond, the American government or any other person who has got a different evidence, view, can go to the court and argue differently. That is the purpose of the institution. With regards to the positions on the Ukraine, Russia, Clement, and I'm glad that she says she has been criticizing and following it. It's part of our democracy. That we can be criticized, we can be wrong, but this is our view. You can say we're wrong, you can criticize this, we understand it. But it's our view that we have done what we can in line with our policy position. And the president, even at the UN General Assembly, you can look at his speeches in the past 2 or 3 years. He has emphasized the respect of territorial integrity of Ukraine. Even the biggest critics of our position on this, and I believe now, they are beginning to say, but indeed there must be discussions. There must be a way to take this matter forward, to find a long-lasting solution. And I sometimes equate this with them, and that is why it is always equated with the ICJ thing. That it's not like the South African government just woke up and decided that no, we are going to the ICJ. The human rights violation and the killing of innocent people in Palestine has been happening for many years. South Africa has been campaigning, speaking on this, since Mandela, Clement. But we went in 2023 early because the situation had become so unpalpable. It was clear to the whole world that this has now gone beyond a humanitarian crisis. So it's not like we just woke up and said we're going to the ICJ. There has been a build-up of many, 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 many years. I will stop there.
All right, Minister, I think that's where we are going to stop. Thank you, everybody, for listening to us. Can we appreciate the Minister of International Relations? We'll now hear from Inga Herbert, who's the Regional Director for the Foundation in Sub-Saharan Africa. Over to you, Inga.
Thank you. Honorable Minister, I see you still have your jacket on, so the seat hasn't been that hot. Thank you very much. It's not...
because I'm scared of the cold.
It's not every day. Thank you for your generosity time-wise and coming here and being so courageous to be open to our questions. It's not every day that we have the Minister of International Relations for us for 2 hours. Thank you very, very much. Clement, it's great to see you in person and not only hear you on the radio. Thank you so much. I think you really managed to have this dialogue exactly the way we wish it here, informal, responding to questions, responding to the listening. Sorry, let me finish, please. Yeah, and thank you, audience. This is a space for listening first, of course, but also for conversation and questions. So this part of the questions is very important to us, and we are very, very pleased with this, with everybody, also many of you coming over from Pretoria today. So thank you very much for that. A very big thank you to Kwesi, who has done the introduction. Kwesi is the architect of our Freedom Dialogues. They are only a good year old now, I think, 1.5 years, and they're actually in this series around coalitions and around the government of national unity. We believe that this is a big opportunity for South Africa, and we want to constructively contribute to continuing the dialogue. So, yeah, but this is also a team effort. Everybody you see around here, they are all team members of Friedrich Naumann Foundation. We don't have an agency for organizing this. So a big, big thank you to the team. Yeah, and be excited. There's bigger things coming up. I think we've established the format now, the Freedom Dialogue. We have ideas who we invite next, but it's still a secret. Thank you very much.